Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Appa in case you're new here, and this is some episode I don't exactly know, but I'm just checking up on you. This is my second semester of the graduate entry nursing program, which basically means you are planning to become an advanced practice nurse or a registered nurse and you have like a degree in something else. With my situation, it was biology, pre-med focus, and I'm hoping to become a nurse practitioner in this program. So I never exactly applied to medical school, just so you guys know. Just ended up not happening. I was considering med school, research, and teaching also. And the teaching aspect, I'm still kind of rethinking it. Part of me is wanting to teach physiology to healthcare students, so we'll see if that ends up happening in the long run. So basically, you guys, I am getting a master's degree. This is not like a DNP focus. I will be hopefully ending up with an MSN in the next 2.5 years. Currently, this is my second semester of the pre-licensure stage. With my program, you can stop after the pre-licensure stage. I most likely will not do that. The main reason being, my field doesn't necessarily require me to stop, and I also think that as an international student, I have to follow the laws. So that is my priority, and I also want to move out of Ohio and start working. So that's just my personal situation. Everyone's going to have personal situation. If you need to stop, go ahead, do your thing, do whatever you need to do. Everyone just has, different priorities. So yeah, by the time I'm done with the family nurse practitioner portion of this program, I will be 27 years old. I'm currently 24, so that's that. Anyways, how my semester has been going, it's a lot more busier this semester than it was last semester. I have not done IVs yet. I have done 2 blood draws, both unsuccessful, but the patients, their blood pressures were really low, so I couldn't really, do much about it. I've given a lot of injections. I'm not really, I feel like I can definitely do that independently now. Yeah, and I've given medications, I've crushed them, and I've, given it via water and, through a syringe, through a gastric tube. I've given it that way because my patient couldn't, they had a swallowing problem. So that's been kind of the skill portion. With my classes, my favorite class I would have to say is acute care nursing at the moment. I feel like I'm learning a lot about how we take care of hospitalized patient, which is great because I do want to do internal medicine or work for internal medicine as a family nurse practitioner. So I think that would be really, really cool to work with adults or children in a hospital setting and in primary care. I'm not going to stick to one, you guys. I'm still interested in doing both. That's for sure. And I'll go a little bit more about why I'm interested in doing both. So yeah, I'm getting a lot of clinical hours. I have clinicals twice a week, and then I also have another I would say it's more community type clinicals. I'm not really actually doing much. The most that I did in that situation, yeah, so I went to a dementia care unit, and the second visit I think I gave an insulin, which I've been doing in the hospital anyway, so it wasn't anything super duper new. One thing which I want to point out, which did make me feel a little bit uncomfortable, was, and obviously it's not the patient's fault, they don't understand with dementia, they do tend to get aggressive. Like that's one of the symptoms. A patient got aggressive towards me. Like I was physically okay, but if I would have tried to help him more, he probably would have hit me. But yeah, he got aggressive towards me and the nurse, so that was a little bit scary, but it is bound to happen. Like that's gonna happen in healthcare. So whether it's an inpatient or like settings like, like dementia care unit type of situations. So that's that. I have noticed some things have disappointed me, some things have not disappointed me. I'm not necessarily disappointed like with my instructors. I think my instructors are pretty good and I think I've learned a lot. One thing which has kind of disappointed me is just like the participation level in my classes. Like I feel like that's lacking. I feel like people just are not really interested very much when it comes to like post-operative patients, which is interesting because a lot of nurses work post-operatively, you guys, or like in situations where patients have been hospitalized and have severe medical problems. So it's interesting to see that there's like a lack of interest in it. I would say 90% of my cohort is interested in, well, not 90%. So 50% is interested in like women's health, midwifery, those two. And then me and one other friend of mine, we're like the only people interested in like internal medicine or like family nurse practitioner. And then the rest of the people are interested in psych. So that's kind of the demographic that we have. So I feel like once I am done with this pre-licensure stage, I don't think a lot of people from my program will be doing family nurse practitioner, which is fine, but seems to be a lot of interest in OB stuff. And for me, you guys, like I grew up in the medical field. Like I come from a medical family background, so I know what OB is. My mom, she's a gynecologist, so like I know everything about OB. But it never really like interested me. So I don't know. I'm not interested in like being a midwife. Just never crossed my mind in undergrad, never crossed my mind until now. And just because people are going to talk about it, like I'm not gonna change my mind. Like I have always known that I've always been aware of my interests. Like I did a lot of research in undergrad to figure out my interests, and I know they don't like let us decide our specialty until like our last semester, but you guys, I'm a very focused person. I know what I want, and I most likely will not change my mind about my specialty. With that being said, not everyone is like that. Some of you guys might not know at all, and that's totally cool. That's you do you, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, in acute care, obviously, like there's a lack of participation, but then I feel like there's also like lack of medical interventions as well, which is a priority in acute care. But it just seems like a lot of people, I'm not blaming them, I don't know what background they're coming from, but a lot of them are not able to understand how you would necessarily deal with like a post-operative patient, like what the priority would be with the post-operative patient. For instance, one of the patients that I dealt with had an EGD done, which is like, they had cancer cells taken out in their GI tract, or yeah, esophageal tract. So yeah, basically, they also had a history of cancer, and they had this cancer removed, and they had this major surgery done. And of course, like, I was very talkative to them. They like requested me a second time, so I took care of them a second time. But my SOAP note, which you will learn about eventually, SOAP note is basically presenting they do this in advanced practice medicine and also like bedside nursing. Basically, you just present your patient and you say what the priority problem is, and then you come up with a solution on how to solve the problem. So of course, because we're like not using like the medical model yet, we have to do nursing interventions. You guys will eventually get familiar with it. So like what you would do at the bedside, what priority do you have on the bedside as the registered nurse to solve this problem. So obviously with post-operative patient, not just with the patient that I mentioned, but like other patients, like you will have issues with movement of the bowel. Like you want to make sure that they have a bowel movement. And my patient had not had that for like past 5 days. So I just said that, bowel movement would be the priority, which in this case makes sense, because if you don't have a bowel movement, then there is something wrong, I was able to hear the bowel sounds, which you should be able to within like 5 minutes or so, in all 4 quadrants of your abdomen. But if you are not, if you're not able to get the bowel movement right away following a surgery, there's some sort of complication. So that was my priority problem. And obviously, in order to fix that, the nursing intervention would be to get them moving, get them ambulating often, so they actually go, defecate. So that was my priority problem, and those are the priority type situations you should be thinking of in an acute care setting. But it seemed like most of the people in my program were not thinking that way, and they were more fixated on the social aspect of acute care, which didn't really make sense to me personally. Like, I get that people are interested in like mental health, but a lot of these patients didn't necessarily have cognitive problems, or like a psychiatric problem. So I was very confused to see them come up with situations where they thought that was the priority problem. Does that make any sense? Where they thought that a psychosocial intervention was a problem. So or was the priority, which was a little bit confusing for me, because I feel like with psychosocial interventions, like they would be more of a priority in like a psych unit and not necessarily a med-surg unit. So I was just slightly confused as to how and why they came up with the interventions that they did. But that's something I was just like a little bit confused about. And then again, like the lack of participation of people in the acute care class. Whenever we talk something like very scientific, or like very, like talking about lab values or any of that, like people just don't want to participate. And it seems to me that they just chose this career because they were either interested in like social work or something, because I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say? It seems a little bit different than what I was expecting. If you're interested in social work, and if the medical aspect doesn't really interest you, I probably would not recommend going to a graduate entry nursing program, you guys, because nursing is not just purely one thing. It's a combination of what I think of what nursing is: mind, body, and soul. So you're looking at all three of those things. Not one thing takes over the other, if that makes any sense. And especially because this program is like, designed for becoming advanced nurse practitioners or advanced practitioners of some sort. You guys, even if you're doing psych mental health, you will do a lot of brain physiology for psych mental health. That is something I just want to put out there for those of you who are like considering psych mental health, because if your goal is to come up with a psychosocial intervention, and also be prescribing medications to patients with bipolar or depression, you need to understand the brain physiology. That is something what I think is important for people to know, without blindly just going into this career field. Because even psychiatrists, they are medical doctors, and they have intense knowledge of brain physiology before they go into psychiatry. So that is something I think people should really, really think about before going into this field. Some people are really interested in home births. And that's another thing, like there's a lot of legal issues with that. A lot of states don't have home births to be legal. So with home births, if you're interested in the idea of birthing, I will tell you 95% of the time you will either work in like a birthing type of clinic or you're gonna work in hospitals. So that's another thing I just kind of want to tell people out there, because I feel like people in my program are not really grasping that you will work in a hospital most of the time, especially with like midwifery. At least with psych mental health, I can see them working more in a psychiatric hospital, but most hospitals also have like psych consults, obviously, like in the emergency room. Sometimes there's a psych NP or psychiatrist available, and sometimes like there's units within general hospitals, like psychiatric units in big hospitals like the one I train at. And of course, like we need them sometimes, because there's a lot of contraindications with like psych medications and like cardiac medications. So yes, we do have to like consult them. But I'm just saying that don't go into this career field if you have zero interest in like learning about the human body, because you do have to learn about the human body. You do need to know what is happening physiologically, whether you're at the bedside or whether you're going into advanced practice. It is very important that you have your science straight up clear. I'm not saying that you need to know like every single detail. Like unless you're going to advanced practice, you probably don't need every single detail. But in order to be like an effective provider, or like even in an acute care setting especially, or like a hospital setting, you would need to know some basic physiology at least. So that's just something I personally think, you guys, and that's kind of has been on my mind, is that I feel like people are just not really grasping the idea of what really is nursing practice or advanced practice. So I hope this video was somewhat helpful. I don't know as to what to expect, whether in terms of your peers or whether in terms of like actual field. Just let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. In no way or form I'm trying to bash like the like the social aspect of nursing. I'm really not. I'm just saying it's not just one thing over the other. It's like a division of three different things, and you do have to understand the medical thing going on in order to help a patient. So thank you so much for watching, and talk to you guys later. Bye.